share your information. Good morning. I'm talking, and here we are. This is what happens. I get excited. It's Dr. Carol Lourie, and I'm here with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Evan Hirsch, who is a medical doctor who has really gone above and beyond in his area of expertise in fighting and fixing fatigue, which is a very common side effect of cancer treatment, and many people are suffering with it before they even get started. So welcome, Evan, and share with us and I see your beautiful book behind you, so take it away. Yes,
Hey, Carol, thanks so much for having me on.
my pleasure.
So,
So
what,
tell us a little bit about, how did you
sure.
go from going to medical school to being this fatigue expert?
Yeah, so I was always really into holistic and natural medicine. I was board certified in holistic medicine before I finished residency. I was practicing acupuncture, medical acupuncture when I was in residency.
Right?
So it was surprising to me when I ended up getting fatigue. But initially, my bride to be got fatigue. So I entered residency. We fell in love. 3 months later, she couldn't get out of bed, and
Oh
that
my
lasted
goodness.
for 3 years, better part of 3 years. And then she was about 80% better, and then the rest of it took a longer period of time. But then a few years after that, we had been married. I had started my own practice. We had a child, and then I got fatigue, and it lasted for 5 years. And it just about destroyed my life, just about destroyed my business. I had to keep hiring people in order to do the job that I couldn't do. I couldn't help out at home. My wife's coming off of her fatigue. We've got a new baby, and she's like, "Can you do the dishes?" And I'm crashed out on the couch. I had so much shame around this because I was already practicing functional medicine. And I
Oh,
was like lying underneath my desk, taking naps, closing my door so that people couldn't see. And after, 1,000 days of doing this, I finally slapped myself upside the head and I said, okay, enough is enough. It's time for me to do something different. And like I said, I was practicing functional medicine. I was replacing deficiencies in nutrients and vitamins and minerals and lifestyle habits. But those things weren't working for me. I was gluten free, dairy free. I was doing all this stuff. But it was really, I had to go to the next step, which was environmental medicine. I had to work
so
on
that's
the
what it was. That's what was your wife's issue, and that was your trigger too?
exactly. So I had to look at heavy metals and chemicals and molds and infections. And I knew that if I could find all of my causes, that I could be successful because I could just match up a treatment with the cause. And so that's what I did. And then I wrote a book about it. And now at this point, we're 100% virtual and we help people all over the world.
That's a very short synopsis of many years of agony and suffering. How old is your child now?
She's 14.
Okay, so 14 years more plus. So,
Exactly.
talk about let's talk about the difference between fatigue in capital letters and fatigue, oh, I'm a little tired.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that because there's a big difference.
There is a big difference, yeah, and it's really a spectrum. Is it, that you can survive and you're eating by drinking coffee, right, and taking stimulants, versus nothing's really helping you. Um, and it's also really important to realize that when it comes to like big fatigue versus little fatigue, that it's like the number of causes that you have and the severity of those causes. So people who've got the big fatigue, they're going to have really significant heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and multiple infections generally, and negative emotional patterns or trauma. But for somebody who just has a little fatigue, perhaps they are not prioritizing their lifestyle habits. Perhaps they need to drink more water. They need to eat better food. They need to get more sleep. They need to get more movement. So what I call a first level problem is a fatigue problem that can be fixed with lifestyle habits. So you fix those things I mentioned, your energy comes back. If you fix those things and your energy still doesn't come back, then you have potentially a level 2 or level 3 problem. A level 2 problem is then you take something for the deficiency causes, which we can talk about more in a minute, and then your energy comes back. This is hormones, nutrients, mitochondrial function, etc. But if you do those things, and that's what I had, and you still don't feel well, then you have a level 3 problem. And that's the usual suspects that I talk about: the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, negative emotional patterns, allergies, electromagnetic fields.
Wow. That's a lot of things
It's a
to
lot of things.
fix. So do you generally start with level one, and then that doesn't do it, you go to level two, and then that doesn't do it, you go to level three?
It's a great question. And the answer is kind of. So generally when people come to see me, they've already done level one. They've worked with a naturopath or a functional medicine or integrative medicine doc, and they've optimized their lifestyle habits for the most part. And generally, they're not seeing any sort of improvement, maybe a little bit. And so we actually start with step two, which is replacing the deficiencies in order to get them feeling better so that they can actually make some of the changes that we also want them to make with the lifestyle habits. Because sometimes they're just so tired that they can't make any sort of lifestyle habit changes. And so we want to make them more robust by optimizing the big three: the adrenals, the mitochondria, and the thyroid, because that's going to significantly improve their energy. And then, we spend most of our time in the program getting rid of the toxicities, the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, etc., because those things just take longer periods of time.
So how do you optimize mitochondria?
So there's several things that we do. So the mitochondria, for those who aren't aware, is the
Yes.
energy center of every cell in the body, except for red blood cells. It produces about 70 to 90% of our energy, and it could get damaged by all of these toxicities that we're talking about today. And I just keep repeating them because they're so important: the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, allergies, negative emotional patterns, EMFs. So all of those things can damage the mitochondria, and including chemotherapy, that's in there as well. Can
Totally.
damage,
Let's just
yeah.
take a minute. That's
Mhm.
one of the main side effects of chemotherapy, that when you go into your oncologist, ladies, they don't go, oh, by the way, this is going to be damaging your mitochondria. But it is a base problem that, people like myself and Dr. Hirsch, we all need to address. How do we help you repair the damage that's done to your mitochondria? And if you don't do that, 10, 15, 20 years later, you can still be suffering.
Yeah. And then mitochondrial dysfunction is actually a big part of the reason why people get autoimmune conditions and cancer.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's really, really important. So, in order to improve the mitochondria, so we have to remove these toxins out of the mitochondria, off the mitochondria, so that it stops using its machinery. And then we have to inject it with some love. And so this can be in the form of phospholipids, which is basically the membrane around the mitochondria that needs to be repaired. There's certain things for the Krebs cycle that we can improve, whether we're donating electrons or whether we're recommending things like acetyl L-carnitine or D-ribose or CoQ10 or a combination of those. But that's generally what we're doing. And then we're also, what's really important about the mitochondria too is that it makes the hormones work better as well. So if you're having hormonal issues, optimizing your mitochondria may also help those. So important note to take into account.
So, unfortunately, most women who have breast cancer do have hormonal problems. They're not breaking down their estrogen properly in a healthy way.
Hmm.
And then they go through breast cancer treatment and they're put on hormone blocking medication, tamoxifen, aromatase inhibitors, and that creates a whole nother level of fatigue and difficulty. So if a woman is on those medications, and I think 80% of women are on some combination of that, how do we support her then
Hmm.
with her mitochondria? Because I do that, but I'm interested to hear what you as an expert also would recommend.
Yeah. So the question is, when people are on hormone receptor blockers, and what was the other medication?
Aromatase inhibitors.
Aromatase inhibitors, yeah. So then, yeah, you have to focus on other components that you can work on. So the mitochondria, I would do the same things that I just mentioned,
Mhm.
but also supporting the adrenals and
Right.
supporting the thyroid. Everything works better, and those I call the big three, because everything works better when those three are optimized. And it's really, the hormones are really a three-legged stool. So you've got your adrenals, and you've got your thyroid, and you've got your sex hormones. And so if you need to, if sex hormones step out of the dance, it leaves the other two holding the bag. And so you really have to optimize your adrenals and your thyroid. And I don't know about the research. The adrenals will take over production of the sex
They
hormones
do.
when menopause and whatnot, but I don't know whether or not optimizing the adrenals would end up increasing risk for cancer if you're trying to block some of these hormones. I wouldn't think so,
No,
but yeah.
no, I don't think so. I mean, I've done a lot of PubMed deep diving, and I haven't ever seen that. I mean, nobody talks about when you optimize the adrenals, you're then going to overstimulate the sex hormone pathways. I mean, those sex, those hormone blocking drugs do a pretty great job.
Yeah.
So even if there would be something, it doesn't happen. But part of that is maintaining. I just did an enormous amount of research. I'm uh, part of the Madeira Academy, and I'm presenting a talk on leptins and cancer and obesity. And one of the things that I want to say to everyone here is one of the most important aspects of this for fatigue and reducing risk of obesity and secondary cardiovascular disease and cancer is keeping your body weight at a very low BMI, because leptins are part when you are overweight or obese, which happens, when you take tamoxifen and aromatase inhibitors, women tend to gain weight. And that extra weight, as you know, contains obesity negative chemicals.
Hmm.
So that's a very important aspect of maintaining good health and keeping your energy level up. So if someone is listening to this and feeling like, well, where am I, level 1, 2, and 3? How can they figure that out?
So we actually have a free step one checklist on our website. So people can go check that out at energymdmethod.com. And what you can do is you can work through that. And after doing so, there's like 33 different causes that we look at. And 75% of those can be determined based off of your symptoms. And so you can
Wow,
work through that. It takes a couple of hours and you're going to know 75% of your causes, which is really powerful because then you
it
can
is.
you can match up the treatments with that. Yeah. So that's one of the ways of determining a lot of the causes that you have, and then you're armed with that moving forward.
And you can reach out to Dr. Hirsch to work with you, which is very smart because he's really good at what he does.
You're sweet.
It's true. And there are very few medical doctors who are experts in fatigue,
Hmm.
and that's your area of specialty. And so for both you and your wife, it was environmental toxins that were causing your fatigue.
Yep, we were living in mold,
Oh,
and we also had several infections. So, and this is not uncommon also that my wife and I got together, and then all of a sudden, she got sick, and then I got sick later. So there was a combination of Lyme type infections, and there was Epstein-Barr virus, there was mycoplasma. So it was a toxic soup. And what's interesting is that a lot of people, they may not express all of their symptoms until they get something like mold exposure that hijacks the immune system so that the immune system can't take care of these infections. And so, you know, we see a lot of mold plus a couple of infections plus negative emotional patterns or trauma. That's just like a big part. And everybody's got trauma, I mean, whether it's trauma with a little t or trauma with a big T, changes the way things happen in our lives, that changes the way that we see the world. And so consequently our approach is multi-pronged, where we're looking at, we do mindset stuff, we do emotional stuff, and then we also do the physical stuff.
so that's similar to what I do. I think that I once had a woman say to me, well, I haven't had trauma. And she was very upset that I was talking about it. So I said, which is quite funny because it's impossible to be an adult, I think, and not have had some level of trauma in your life. And so I said, okay, if we replace the word trauma with the word upsetting experience. Oh, yes, I've had a lot of those. And then she begins to tell me everything that had happened to her. And I said, I think that those are traumatic experiences, not just upsetting experiences.
Mhm.
So if you listen to this and you're thinking, oh, I haven't had trauma, let's just reframe it for upsetting. But it's interesting that people don't think they've had trauma because there's this tendency to like, oh, I can do this. I'm going to adapt. I'm a superwoman. And it's not traumatic to have my breasts removed and my body changed, and I'll get over it. And I think that in life, those are definitely not little moments. And, we need to turn the volume down on what is upsetting versus what is traumatic and really acknowledge that. And so I like that you keep saying negative emotional patterns. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So yeah, anything that happens along the way from birth to earth can end up causing some negative emotional patterns. And so this is kind of like how we see the world. Is the world safe? How we see ourselves in the world? What sort of confidence do we have? When I think about myself as a parent, I'm doing the best that I can, but I fall short all the time.
We all do.
Yeah, and so
It's amazing.
think about our parents. Our parents were doing the best, but the reality is that they failed us in some way or another, even if you
Right?
had all the love in the world, right? And then there's the relationships that we had with kids in school. I see my daughter who's a high schooler trying to navigate this right now socially, right? And self-confidence issues and all these other things. And so it's just incredibly we all have these negative emotional patterns that we actually have to relearn. We have to figure out, there's habits of highly successful people. And if you look at everybody from Michael Jordan to Yo-Yo Ma or whatever, they all have mindset practices and they're all doing their emotional work in
Oh,
order to take their
100%.
lives to the next level. So that's what I mean by negative emotional patterns. And so we have a 4-step mindset practice where we have people. The first step is to work on gratitude and express gratitude every day. The second step is to have a vision for your life and see what your perfect life looks like and replay that in your mind every day. The third step is to look at any sort of limiting beliefs that you have, flip them into empowering beliefs, tell them to yourself regularly, essentially they're affirmations. And then the last step is to ask yourself empowering questions, not asking yourself, why is this happening to me? But instead asking yourself, how can I love myself more today? What can I do today in order to move my health forward? Right, so there's just so much work that can be done here. And then in the emotional component, we have trauma informed coaches on staff which help with limbic system retraining, nervous system retraining, in order to get back in touch with our bodies and make that mind body connection and have more mindfulness in our everyday interactions.
This is, fantastic. I just misspelled the word how, everybody. Excuse my typo. Um, so it's really interesting because I start my day every day with getting my mindset. That's it. I have my version of what you said. And John Assaraf, who is somebody who I'm working with right now, he has this whole thing about limiting beliefs.
Hmm.
And the way he asks your questions, you go in there and you think, well, I don't have poverty consciousness. I know this, I know that. And then he asks you to go deeper. And I realized, OMG, I mean, that's the top level, but there's deeper levels that are unconscious. And as a follower of Jung in psychology, it's like what you don't know is what's going to turn around and bite you in the rear end. That's the definition of unconscious. You don't know what you don't know. So the
Hmm.
more you can open yourself up to that learning about what is there that you're not aware of, the healthier you can become in your mindset, in your life, in your physicality, in your how you feel about yourself. So I love that you have this 4-step mindset practice because I think everyone should start their day with that.
Hmm. I
And
do as
that
well.
keeps you above the wave of life. And, we all are going to have those moments when we get sucked under the wave. That's called a complex. But you keep yourself out of those places much more if you have a 4-step mindset practice every day. And it
Absolutely.
takes like 25 minutes, a half hour of, it's like, well, you're going to spend a half hour getting yourself to have a great day, or are you going to like say, oh, it's not important and feel horrible all day?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
the
and what we've
choice.
seen in the last several years, and the media and all this sort of stuff, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by everything external. And so starting from the inside out and realizing that, if you want to change things in your outside world, maybe you want to change your partner, maybe you want to change the media, maybe you want to change politics, whatever you want to change, you have to realize that it all starts here, and that there are not going to be, you can change the outside world by actually changing yourself and creating a different vibration for what you are then attracting into your life.
100%. Yeah. And that's part of making your body and your mind inhospitable to cancer regrowth. We're working against recurrence. And then we're helping women get through treatment. And the sooner you can embody what Dr. Hirsch is talking about, and I also support in my program, the healthier you're going to be. I mean, it's very, very important. I think that really we should start with mindset first and then go into diagnosis and treatment, because mindset is the beginning of everything.
Hmm.
Can't stress that enough. So I think for those of you who are watching and follow me, I think Dr. Hirsch is really, his program is fantastic and he gets really good results. Are you doing research at this point to publish?
No, but I just did a recent survey. So we had 62 graduates, and we asked them what their success was, and a number of other markers, and they gave us 4.35 out of 5 stars. So they were definitely pleased with the program, but that is something that I'm working at doing right now. Now, what's interesting is that everybody has different causes. You know, of
I
the
know that's the
30.
problem.
Right, of the 33 different causes we look at, everybody has 20 plus of those causes. And so, don't get overwhelmed by that number, who's ever listening and watching. Like, we just work through those and you get rid of those. But everybody has a different protocol essentially. And so
That's me too. That's
yeah,
called individualized medicine. That's the
exactly.
beauty of what we do, and it's why people get better. It's not like,
Exactly.
oh, everybody gets this.
Right.
Doesn't work like that. Everybody's cause of breast cancer is different. Everybody's cause of chronic fatigue is different. So it's the individuality that makes the difference, right?
It does, but it makes it challenging when you're trying to do research.
Yeah,
The
it does.
scientific method is, changing one variable and testing for it is just very hard to do when you're practicing the way we're
You
practicing.
need to have a global perspective on how they fill out the intake questionnaire versus how they fill out the exit. And I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter. It's a hard question. You're right. When you look at what is addressed in PubMed, they never go into that level of everybody. In breast cancer, it's not like, everybody has 7 different markers. How are you going to, genomic SNPs? How are you going to test for all of them? They don't ever do that.
Hmm.
It's, so anyway,
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
yeah,
So
and what we
how, go ahead.
can I just say, what we found too was that the reasons why people were successful in the program, or the reason why people aren't successful, um, is a better way of saying it, is that if they don't find their causes, and they don't have a mentor who can help them navigate the bumps in the road. So that's kind of like how we built our program. I know that's how you built yours as well, is because you need those two things. You need to figure out all the causes that you have, and then you need to have somebody who can actually guide you through the bumps, because there's always bumps.
It's impossible not to have bumps. And it's interesting for me with breast cancer is that for some reason women think they should be able to do this themselves. They go on
Hmm.
PubMed, they do I'm sure you have this too. They go on PubMed, they do an enormous amount of research. They come in with 20 bottles of supplements that they've purchased. 7/8 of them they've wasted their money on because they're not made by companies that you and I would support as being made to pharmaceutical quality standards. And they
Hmm.
haven't done that in-depth figuring out your 43 causes and my causes, and then they wonder why it's not working.
Hmm.
So, what do you want to say about that?
Well, I definitely agree. I mean, you have to have the mentorship. I mean, the thing is, the reason why you hire somebody like you or I is because you want to compress time. Like, you want to do this in 6 to 12 months or however long it takes, as opposed to 10 years,
No
right?
joke.
So that's and then you still may not get all the answers. And so, that's
And you
why, I
will
mean, if you
feel
want to get
better.
right and you want to feel better, right? If you want to take piano lessons, do you do it on your own? I mean, some people do, but generally you hire a piano teacher. I'm a singer, so I have a voice teacher that I meet with every week,
That's
right? So you're
beautiful.
you're paying somebody to hold you accountable. You're paying somebody to navigate like I said, the different bumps, or they're helping you course correct and making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So that's the reason to hire somebody like us.
Okay. I gotta type anymore. Evan, how do people reach you?
So you can find me at energymdmethod.com. We now have a little button in the corner where you can actually text me directly. It's
Energymethod.com? Oh,
energymdmethod.com.
Energy MD Method.
Yep. And so you can, in the bottom right-hand corner, you can click on that and you can text me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. We can start a conversation. We also have a free Facebook group where I go and I post regularly, and I'm everywhere on social media. And I love having conversations with people. So you can Facebook message me, you can Instagram message me,
What's
and
your
I'll
Facebook
I'll
group
chat with you.
URL? Where are you on Facebook?
Gosh, well, it's the group is called Energy MD, formerly known as the Fix Your Fatigue group. And so I would just search for Hirsch or search for Energy MD,
And
and you'll be able to find it.
what's your Instagram?
It is at Evan Hirsch MD. I'm trying to remember what it
I
is.
know, we don't know anymore. Yeah.
I'll pull it up here in a
It's
second. But yeah,
okay.
I
I
think
got
it's
it. It's I think if you Google Dr. Hirsch's name, you'll find him. He's everywhere because he's very good at what he does.
oh,
Well,
thank
thank you
you.
so much for spending time with me and my community. I really appreciate it. And hold on for just a second after we're over. I just want to talk to you for 2 seconds. And ladies, please take advantage of all this information. Go onto Dr. Hirsch's website and take that quiz and see where you are. That's the beginning. I mean, that's
Mhm.
going to be very important information for you. And then we can have you reach out to me and I'll connect you with Dr. Hirsch. Okay. Thank you all, ladies. Have a wonderful afternoon. Evan, I'll talk to you in a second. And this is Carol Lourie signing off for now. And there'll be much more later. Speak to you soon now.